Okay, for project 1, the assignment is to create a daylight lighting and a nighttime lighting. So we've got two examples here for you guys to look at. Daylight incorporates indirect lighting, so we will be adding a Skydome and an HDR image to the scene. We will set up a directional light that will show through the windows. You will not put window panes in here. If you do, you'll have to make sure that you make them turn off opacity to make sure the light comes through. Otherwise, I just took the window panes out. And with the nighttime scene, we also have an HDR image on a Skydome, Arnold Skydome. We do not have a directional light coming through the windows. That we're going to let the HDR image do all the work for us in the nighttime scene. But what we are doing is we're adding directional lights. Okay, these lights are going to be spotlights, point lights, and some fill lights. So those are the basic formula for nighttime scene. Nighttime scene's much harder to actually create because of some of the intricacies of the lighting scenarios that we're going to be using and how we can actually manipulate those lights. So it's going to be a little harder for you, the nighttime scene. So we're going to start with that first. But these are two examples I feel are good examples of direct lighting and indirect lighting. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull up the scene that I used for this particular example. What I'm going to do is kind of take you through the lights that I actually used, and you can use those same types of lights in your scene. So the first thing I did was create a Skydome. So I went to Arnold and created a Skydome. Okay. Now I want the Skydome to be turned off, but I want you to go ahead and add that Skydome to your scene. So that's already done. You will not have an image to that Skydome, so you'll have to actually go into the Skydome attributes, and next to color you'll have to put it in there. You'll have to put your image in there. So that can take a long time depending on the resolution that you're using. I used an 8K resolution, it's about 98 megabytes. Okay. So that's a large scene. So when you click on it and you turn it on, it's actually take a long time to actually pull in. It'll take like 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, depending on your graphics cards. So once that pulls in and you see it, make sure you hit the 6 key. The 6 key invokes texture, hardware texturing, so you can see it. You should be able to see your image. The next thing you need to do is under color space, make sure you select raw. Okay? All right. Once that's done, then you can go in here and start tweaking things out. So I'll select it. And the first thing I do, though, is I make sure I turn the intensity to off. I don't want to see it right now. Just remember you have it turned off. Okay? So the resolution is going to be 0. I don't want to see it right now. Nothing. Okay? Exposure, 0. We just need to remember what it was. Okay? So it's going to come in at 1 and the exposure is going to be 0. That's what you're going to see. Okay? Now I've got to put in the resolution. What is the resolution of this image? Well, it's 8K. So I put down 8,000. If you pulled in a 4K image, you need to put 4,000 there. Do we want to see the image? Yes. So please do not check mark use color temperature. Make sure that's unchecked. Okay? The next thing we're going to look at is exposure. Of course, that's going to be 0 because we don't want to have any. We don't want any outside influence on the inside of this object. We don't want to see it. We don't want to see anything other than what's going to be happening inside. Okay. So we're gonna start from square one. How exactly did I get that image that I showed you earlier? We need to make sure samples are set at 3. Now this is important because this is samples for for shadows, right? So under this, you see we want it to be normalized. We want check mark to be cast shadows. The shadow color is going to be black. So samples at 3. So if I have a scenario where I need to change the shadow color because it's too dark, I can change that here. Okay? Be careful with this. This can make your scenes look really ambient. You really need to be a good lighting artist. If you're a good lighting artist, you're not going to have to mess with this. Okay? But as you are learning and you are trying to figure things out, I will understand if you have to fiddle with this a little bit. Okay? If you have really black shadows, you may want to pull this down just a little bit. Okay? All right. Volumetric shadows, that is if you are using volumetric lighting. Again, I make sure I click on that, and I also click make sure I set that to 3 volume samples. Okay? What is volumetric shadows? That's like showing dust particles and stuff like that. Camera should be at 1. If you don't want to see your background image, you would turn that to 0. But it will still illuminate your scene, right? It'll still be there. Okay? Some of you may want to do that because the image is blurry. Even though it's at 8K, it is blurry. It's not perfectly defined. My final example was a 16K image, and I brought it into Photoshop and sharpened it. That's what I had to do. This is just this. You can see that it is blurred. It is blurry, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Okay, I'm not going to grade you on blurriness of that. Okay, don't worry about that. All right. The next thing we're going to do, so you turn that off. So exposure is off. You got everything set up here. Intensity is at 0. Exposure is at 0. It's not actually making any difference in here at all. We do not have a directional light outside. We don't want light to come in. Okay, only from the HDR. And you can see that I've got a fill light at the center of the room. This is basically, you're going to want to do that. So you're going to want to create a spotlight. How do you do that? Well, you go to create, and you go to create lights, and you create spotlight. You don't need to go into the option box. Just default is fine. When you create it, it will create it at the center of your scene. It will look like this. Okay? And whenever you create a light, you have to understand that that light is now just fully illuminating your scene. It's actually working right out of the box. Okay? All right, so there's some things we need to fix. Let me show you what to do with that. So when I create a fill light, I usually have really tall ceilings. I really don't want to see my ceiling. Okay? So when I actually render an image, I hate showing the ceiling. So I would highly recommend you just keep your ceiling up really high and just give me images like this. The last thing I want to see is I don't care about your ceiling. I don't care where the light is coming from, right? The ceilings are ugly. Try not to show them. I'm just telling you, right? That's why my images look good, because I don't have to show a ceiling. I have tall walls. That's okay, because I can set my image like this. Okay, all right. So when you're setting up lights, you got to get your resolution set up right. Right now I got it at 540. Now it's HD, so if I change it to a higher resolution, it won't change my camera, right? So I'm using my perspective camera. I'm not too finicky or picky about that. A lot of people want you to create a camera and use your camera and all that stuff. I'm not really picky about that right now. So what I do want you to do is find an area that you would like to show. Let's say, I'm doing a perspective like this. So that one shot was like this. I really want to focus on the windows, which is really cool, the lamp, which is really cool, and my foreground, which is really cool, which is this. So I've got a really nice depth of field here. So I've got objects that are in the foreground, I've got objects in the middle ground, and I've got objects in the background. Okay? Foreground, middle ground, background. That's how you compose a really interesting shot. Okay? So how do I do that? Well, I've got to set my settings up. So my render settings, let's click on this guy right here. render settings, and I want Arnold renderer, of course. And under Arnold renderer, we're going to basically leave that at default. I'll show you how to tweak that up when we get a pretty decent renderings. So basically, if you see diffuse at 1 and specular at 1, it's okay. I usually change those to 2 and 2. Total should be 10, transmission 8, and depth of 10. If you want to see any glass reflection or anything like that, you have to have at least 8 in transmission. If it's lower than that, it's not enough. Okay? You may want to make a note of that. The comments tab, basically all I'm looking for in here is default, but down at the bottom, make sure renderable camera, whatever you're going to render through, whether it be a camera itself or a perspective, make sure you highlight that. Under presets, HD 540 is a good start. And of course, that just equates to 540 by 960. And then when you're all finished with that, then you can close that. And then what I want you to do is, while you're looking through your perspective camera, I want you to click on the resolution gate. Okay? This allows us to see what your resolution, what you're actually capturing through that image. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the lamp light. The lamp light is, we've already got a light that's in the scene. We really don't want it to illuminate anything. So we want to turn that, basically the spotlight we created, off. Okay? So that light that I created, haven't done anything with it, you know, that I created, can be taken out. Okay, I need to turn off Autosave real quick, so I'm going to go under Files and Projects and turn Autosave off. It's been a pain, so I'm going to turn that off. All right, so back to here. I'm going to go, I turn that off, and you can see I've got a light in here that I've created. Okay. Whenever you create a light system, it puts all the lights at the very bottom of your outliner. So if you want to know where they're at, you can rename them and all that stuff. Okay? So you can see I've got mine renamed. I got picture light 1, 2, 3, all through 6. Okay? This is a spotlight I just created, so I'm going to turn that. I just wanted to use that as an example. So if I go Control A, I can turn that off. So I can turn that off by illuminates by default. You can turn it off and on. You don't have to change any settings. You can just turn that off and on. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of that. You know how to create a light. The next light that we're going to create, okay, is going to be a light for the lamp. And you're going to need to create that light lamp. So we're going to go in here. We're going to go to Create. And we're going to go to Lights. And this is going to be a point light. Okay? Now, point lights are omnidirectional. Okay, point lights are omnidirectional. So they spread light in all 360 degrees. Okay? When you have recessed lighting, okay, especially spotlights, that's when you're going to use spotlights. And so recessed lighting, you've seen those before. They kind of look like floodlights, and they're pushed in. It's a little round thing that's pushed in. These lights in the room here, in our classroom, are fluorescent lights, and that would be considered an area light. So if you want to actually recreate that type of light, you can do that using area lights. Okay? So we're going to work with point lights and spotlights today. So you can create a point light, and it comes in like this. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to place it right in the center of the light bulb. Okay? So you're going to have to go in here from the side view and get that placed in the center, right? So place that in the center of the spotlight, go to the top view, and this is how I place my lights. Okay? Alright, I would highly recommend that you model a light bulb, right? I modeled all the interesting parts of this object, and even a light bulb. Okay? Alright, so the point light is set in there. I would highly recommend that you change that. I've got my outliner open, and to find it you can go to Windows Outliner. And with that selected, I'm going to double click on that and just name it something like lamp light 1. Now you're going to have 2 lamps, okay, that are working, so you need to have two point lights, okay? So just rename it whatever you want. And I'm going to get rid of it because I've already got one. So I've created it for you. So now we're going to go into my lamp light. There it is. Okay, if I hit the 4 key, you can see it's in there. All right, so we got to prep the scene. So how do we prep the scene? Okay, so prepping the scene to be able to see the lamp light is something we're going to have to do.